moment. We'll get off at exit 2 and talk about China. Sydney, very good morning to you.
Morning. Although, Mike, the UK-China relations could be metaphored as a roundabout as well.
They could, actually. I quite like that. Well, here we have Rachel Reeves looking very beleaguered right now. You know, the economy not doing terribly well here. Lots of people saying she shouldn't probably be going to China because it's the wrong time to be away. The markets are in a bit of turmoil. But what I haven't been able to discover really yet is exactly what she's hoping to get from China. She's not taking any press with her. She's taken Andrew Bailey from the Bank of England and several other sort of top bankers from various different commercial organisations. What are you hoping, or what is she hoping to achieve?
Yeah, she's mainly focused on the financial side for the UK. So she's taking a lot of city executives, as you say, Andrew Bailey from the Bank of England, but also private city executives such as senior executives from HSBC. She basically wants to resume the high-level financial talks that were the norm under the previous Labour government, but really over the course of the UK's relationship with China souring over the last few years have kind of fallen off the wayside. And China, for once, is in a mood to listen. And I say for once because under Xi Jinping, it has been a slightly tricky economic partner, at least, and sometimes, you know, under the wolf warrior diplomacy, doesn't actually want to be friendly. But now the Chinese economy is actually doing quite badly too. You know, they're facing deflation, not inflation. And so China is in a receptive mood. And Rachel Reeves thinks that maybe this could be something she could do better than the previous Conservative governments.
I mean, she keeps talking, as does Keir Starmer, about foreign investment, but she wants to bring it into kind of the public arena, doesn't she? She doesn't necessarily want private companies coming to start private businesses. She wants private companies to start kind of sharing sort of public-private ownership, if you like, and projects that they keep talking about in a sort of airy-fairy way. I mean, China and Britain's sort of investment relationship has been a bit rocky over the years, hasn't it? I mean, some previous governments have not wanted Chinese investment.
Yeah, and Chinese trade, at least with the UK, has been going down. And investment, you know, Chinese investment outwards has also been a bit tricky because of domestic reasons inside China, where Xi Jinping doesn't necessarily want that money to be flowing out. So, you know, it's you've got to consider the Chinese domestic position as well. I think your question just basically shows how this might not be a positive story that she's hoping for. You know, if she succeeds on this trip, and let's say come Monday she comes back from Shanghai, comes back from Beijing, and says, we've got this shiny new deal with China, is that really a positive political story for her? Or does that raise more questions about, well, what have you done to buy that deal?
What have you promised the Chinese? Exactly right. And she's not going to see President Xi, is she? She's seeing, I think, his deputy. So what's that likely to lead to? I mean, is anyone who's not President Xi worth talking to in China?
Yes, they are. Of course, he has centralised power to an extent that's not been seen with his predecessors recently. But, you know, he relies on a lot of his, you know, close cohort, the Politburo Standing Committee. And so, you know, that is still very worthwhile. Those people are worthwhile to talk to. For Xi, you know, he's not going to meet someone who is not a leader of the country, basically. You know, if he were to meet Rachel Reeves, the Chinese way of looking at that would be to see that as a power imbalance. Yes. And even I was just reading the Financial Times was reporting this morning that the Trump team think that Trump having invited Xi to the inauguration, the Chinese will be sending slightly more kind of deputy person over there instead, not Xi Jinping himself. But, you know, there is this kind of face-saving exercise going on where Xi has to only be rolled out when it's really, really, you know, valuable to the Chinese. You know, they're kind of keeping him behind the scenes for now. He's not doing ceremonial stuff. I was going to ask you about what their view would be of the incoming Trump administration, because Trump, it seems to me, is playing his cards much more cleverly this time around than he did in 2016, because he's better at it now and he doesn't really have to prove anything. He seems, I mean, even to the point where he was saying yesterday that he got on very well with Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and even Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who were all in the same ceremony for the funeral of Jimmy Carter. You know, he's a much more, shall we say, I don't know, sophisticated politician now, I think. Yeah, they were sharing jokes, weren't they? Although this also comes from the week where he's continued to say that Canada should be the 51st state and that the US will buy Greenland. So, you know, I think there may be limits to that sophistication. But I think Trump certainly is underrated by a lot of people. You know, in terms of his foreign policy, my read on it is that he sees it as business dealings. He sees Xi as the other business executive across the board table from him. How can I get the best deal from him? And so there is one part of him which has been charming and diplomatic, and that's the invitation to the inauguration and, you know, privately saying things like, you know, I actually really like this person on a personal level.
Right.
But then the other thing is just kind of hanging over the top of all of that is this threat of more tariffs. And Trump has talked about 60% tariffs on goods coming in from China. And so the Chinese are seeing all of this. And in some ways, it's more understandable because they also see the world as business dealings, as cynical power plays. And so on that level, they're kind of, you know, the same kind of people. On the other hand, Trump will be a really hard negotiator. You know, this.
Oh, he will. Well, he's basically said, hasn't he, if you want to build cars and sell them in America, you need to build them in America. Otherwise, we're going to charge you an awful lot more money.
Yes, which is quite similar to what the Biden administration has said. But I think what we can see with Trump is that it's going to be much more wide-ranging. You know, he's going to be using other parts of the economy, not just the high-tech renewable parts, to just basically as a negotiating tool to start getting the Chinese to come around the negotiating table. Last time with the trade war, some of the tariffs were on things like soybeans, you know, things that are not national security reasons for the US to be keeping the Chinese imports out, but just as a kind of negotiating tactic. And coming at a time when the Chinese economy is very, very weak, it does make the Chinese, I think again. But I wouldn't necessarily write off Trump's foreign policy.
I'm certainly not. I think it's going to be a fascinating first year. Absolutely right. Cindy, thank you very much indeed. Cindy Yu, Assistant Editor of Spectator and presenter of the Chinese Whispers podcast. Rachel Reeves on her way to China. We don't know what she's going to come back with. We don't know what she's even going there for. It may well be that she can't even announce a deal with China if she gets one. It all sounds a bit mad, doesn't it?